and welcome to Tokyo Shutter Speed, where we talk cars and car photography. My name is Rick, and I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty pumped with what I have to share with you today. It's a Mk4 Toyota Supra. As usual, we're going to show you around the car, take it for a spin, and then go take some photos. So we thought long and hard about where we would drive this car. And we were originally thinking like up a mountain road or something, get it on some bendies. But when you think about it, this car's got kind of a street racing reputation. So we thought it'd be cool to stay in Tokyo this time. That's why today, we're here at the airport now, which is why you can see this air traffic control tower coming out of my noggin. But we're going to be visiting various locations around the city. This Mk4 Supra is one of the most iconic cars ever to come out of Japan, maybe even the world. It was impressive when it was released in 1993, and it solidified its status as a JDM legend in the years after. We'll talk a little bit about why it became such a legend in a moment, but first let's talk a bit of history. So as I mentioned, this is the Mk4. So what about the Mk 1, 2 and 3, you ask? Well, they weren't all that great. So the Supra started off as a GT car, which Toyota built to compete with Nissan's Z car. But they didn't want to start from scratch, so they used their existing Celica platform. So the Mk 1 and Mk 2 were actually variations of the Celica. The Mk 1 Supra was a longer version of the Celica with 2 extra cylinders. It was developed with some help from Lotus, and it was called the Celica XX. Then the Mk 2 was a further evolution of this with a slightly more powerful engine. It was only from the Mk 3 generation did Toyota actually separate the Celica and the Supra. The Celica took Toyota's new front-wheel drive system, while the Supra kept the rear-wheel drive setup, got a more powerful engine and became its own car. It was only towards the end of its life cycle when the Mk 3 began to realise its potential. It was given a brand new performance inline-6 engine called the 1JZ, and this made it the fastest Supra to date. It became more than just average. But it was still quite heavy and not very powerful, which is why it didn't win as many races as anticipated. Cars like the Ford Cosworth, the Nissan Skyline and the BMW M3 were lighter and more powerful. So 1993 came along, I turned 4 years old, and Toyota redesigned the Supra. They made it lighter, gave it a sleek new design and a beast of an engine. This engine was the JZ2 and a legend was born. So we'll talk about why this is such a lovely engine when we take it for a spin, but first let's have a look around the car. Let's start with the exterior. For the Mk4, they ditched the boxy design of the 70s and 80s and they went with this sleek modern design. This long hood, this really long wheelbase, it almost has like Dodge Viper-like proportions and it just screams drive me. Drive me like you're late for work. The front end is pretty subtle, no crazy aggressive lines or shapes or even vents. It's quite elegant and smooth, but still has that put a foot wrong and I'll rip your face off kind of look to it. A bit like Javier Bardem.
I need you to step out of the car, sir.
So it's a GT Sports Coupe with 2 doors and then this sloping roof takes you around to the back. Now it's this back end that gets me all hot and bothered, and it's not just because I'm an ass man, there are actually 2 reasons. One is its beautifully subtle design, like these headlights with the 4 circles in them, just beautifully symmetrical. And although subtle, it's still wide enough to feel aggressive. Reason number 2 is the fact that I stared at this back end for years, playing games like Gran Turismo and Need for Speed. So I have this insanely strong feeling of adoration. I feel like I grew up with this car. It's like the Japanese older brother I never had. Right, so you might be thinking, wait a minute, something doesn't look right about that Supra. And yeah, you'd be right, it doesn't have its famous spoiler. And when I first saw a photo of this car, I was actually a little bit disappointed by the lack of spoiler, because it's not often you see one without a spoiler. But when you get to see it in person, I actually think it looks great. And when we were researching this car, we actually found out that the original TV ad for the Supra in Japan showed it without its spoiler. Alright, now let's have a look inside. So this is the 3-litre twin turbo and it's a 2001 model year, so it's actually one of the younger Supras out there. But it's the automatic, so not the more desirable model, unfortunately. But we're not going to complain. We're just really grateful that we even have the opportunity to sit into this, let alone drive it. So the first thing you notice when you sit into this car, and I know it's going to sound cliche, I know it's been said 100 times, but I don't think there's any other way to describe it. It actually feels like you're sat into the cockpit of a fighter jet in here. It's just so driver focused. And you have so many dials and buttons going all the way up from the center console, up around the dash, into the gauge cluster, and even down along the door. Yeah, so all the dials and instruments and gauges, they just flow around you like this big warm blanket, almost like a big mechanical Japanese burrito. Should we get frijoles for lunch?
Yay!
Yeah. Another thing I found weird about the car when I sat in is there's two buttons on the steering wheel that say down and down. I was like, what the hell do these do? And then I remembered it's a Tiptronic. So you've got the downshift on the front of the steering wheel and the upshift on the back. So we'll have to give that a try when we take it for a spin in a bit. One thing it's not really a huge deal, but I really like about this car is where the door handle is. Like, it's really low in the door and it just makes it feel sportier. I really like it. Right, enough chin wagging. Let's take it for a spin. All right, now let's get her out on the motorway. Is it sexist to call a car a her or a she? I don't know. Right, we're on the, what's it called? The Metropolitan Expressway?
Yes, Metropolitan.
The Stocko. It's like an intercity highway in Tokyo, and it is so much fun. It's like 2-3 stories above ground, so you're like flying through the city at like, you know, 2nd, 3rd story level. All right, let's go. So before we give it welly and figure out what this 3-litre twin turbo engine is like, I just want to throw something out there. I think turbochargers are a bit annoying, basically because of turbo lag. You know, you floor the accelerator and you want to go, but you know, you get like lag for a few seconds and then all of a sudden it snaps and it hits you in the back, and it's not my favorite way to go fast. I'd rather a naturally aspirated engine with decent throttle response any day. However, apparently Tokyo did something special with this engine. Did I say Tokyo? Jesus Christ, I'm still sleepy. Apparently Toyota did something special with this engine. They didn't put the turbochargers running at the same time. They made them sequential. So one kicks in around 2,500 RPM and the bigger one kicks in around 4,000 RPM. So you have like constant boost. So let's find an open space of road and give it a bit of welly, shall we? All right. Let's see how she does. Holy Jesus me! Wow! Wow! That is intense. That is insane. I love it. So the engine on this thing, the 2JZ, is the reason why this car is such an icon. Toyota basically over-engineered this engine, which made it really easy to tune. Now, you can pretty much tune any car to get more horsepower out of it, but there comes a point when the engine just can't handle all that power and stress anymore. But this engine can handle insane amounts of stress. You know, this version, the 3-litre twin-turbo automatic, puts out around 280 horsepower. Apparently the US market model put out 320. This automatic model can be tuned up to about 500 horsepower, I think, which is insane. But if you go with the manual transmission can handle even more stress. So that can be tuned up to like 800 horsepower with pretty much stock components. And if you swap out a few things, you can get over 1,000 horsepower from this engine, which is absolutely insane. To put that in context, the Bugatti Veyron only has 1,001 horsepower. So you could have more horses in your Supra.
Ouch!
And actually, the fact that they're so easy to tune means that everyone tuned them. So it's really hard to find a stock model, and that means the prices are going up like crazy. I was looking at like the used car sites here in Tokyo, and there's one, I think 1994 model, going for like 10 million yen, which is absolutely crazy money. All right, now how does it handle? Well, the steering is a little bit vague, but it's very planted. Like, I'm throwing around a bend here, and there's very little body roll, and it gives me confidence. But yeah, it's like, you know, power steering from 20 years ago, so yeah, doesn't give you a whole lot of response. It's not like a Porsche or something, but yeah, handles pretty well. Right, one thing I love about this car is the driving position. I mean, the minute I sat into it, I was like, wow, this is really nice. You're nice and low down. The seat it's not hard, but it still like hugs you well. and yeah, you can just like see everything perfect. We drove the new Supra there a while back, and the visibility is terrible. Like, it's lovely and comfortable, and you're nice and low down, it feels very sporty, but the windows are tiny and you can't really see anything. With this, I'm nice and low, the seat is hugging me, but I've still got great visibility around the car. Right, so, you know, as I mentioned earlier, the manual transmission is the more desirable option, but I actually really like this automatic. Like, it's just super easy, and it still goes. Whoa! Wow, 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 wow. I mean, like, of course, if you want to be, like, acting the bollocks and drifting and stuff, I guess the manual would be more crack, but if you're, you know, just having a leisurely drive and you want to put the boot down now and again, the automatic is great. Okay, let's see what this Tiptronic gearbox is all about.
3 kilometers. Take the exit on the left.
Okay, so stick it into manual, click down on the gear shift, drop down 1 gear, drop down 2, and floor it. Whoa! And up. Ooh. Oh wow. That's actually quite a lot of fun. I mean, the manual will be great, as I've said about 100 times, but that's pretty fun. Wow, what a car though. You know, this isn't the fastest car around. You could probably buy a faster car for half the price these days. But this just feels special. It's this, like, fighter jet cockpit setup. It's this insane turbo situation. And it's the fact that I just know I'm driving a Mk4 Supra. Listen to that. Whoa! You know, there's a sense of theatre about the whole thing. It's not like you're just driving, you know, another expertly engineered German car that will take you around a bend at 200 miles an hour and it's the pinnacle of motoring technology. It's not like that. So it's like that first time you've become mature enough to have a civilized beer with your father, and you're in the pub and your father's telling you all these stories about the good old times, and you have that warm fuzzy feeling, you have that feeling of nostalgia, but then your mad Uncle Frank comes in and orders 10 shots of tequila and everything gets a bit wild. This is what that car is like. It's like you feel like you're a part of history, but it can go from 0 to 90 like that, or like this. Whoa! I just got to adjust the position of the car. It looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to go a bit further back, increase the focal length to get a bit of compression in the background. That'll make the bridge look even bigger. that looks sick. Very nice. Whoa, my arse. Ooh, that looks pretty good. The sun is coming through here. I'm so sleepy though. What do we get, like 3 hours sleep?
2 hours, I guess.
Back further. Still need to go back further. Look at this. On the grill. Turn the car around to get the photo from the back, but I noticed this antenna is like popping up. This is like peak 90s engineering, even though this is a 2001 model. So yeah, I think we just got to cut the engine and that should come down. Let's try that. Did you ever see Terminator 2? That's Sarah Connor. Right, should we go to the next location? I think we got good photos. Let's go. Okay, so we're at the second location for shooting. It's a weird old factory in Kawasaki. We don't really know what they make here, but we can look it up and let you know in the description below. The reason why we chose this location is because Supra has got this kind of, you know, industrial grungy vibe. So we're hoping to take some photos in front of the factory here. Alright, so we've set the car up here in front of this no entry sign, which I think it looks pretty cool. We'll add to the photo. We've got the factories in the background and they're all lit up. They've got a bunch of, you know, steel pipes and stuff. It looks really cool. The only problem is it's dark. So if I was to expose for just the lights in the background, then the car will be completely black. So what we're going to do is we're going to try a bit of light painting. Okay, for light painting, you need a few things. 1, a camera. 2, tripod. Tripod's very important. I recommend a little remote because you're going to be using long exposures, so you don't want to get any shakiness in the camera. And last but not least, you need a light. So we've got this LED bar here. And basically what you do is you take one photo exposing for the background, and then you take multiple photos adding light to the car. And then you put them all together in Photoshop, you stack them up, and you pull pieces of light from different photos to create this beautiful collage of lighted background and lighted car. Is lighted even a word? I'm not sure. Right, so in order to paint the light on the car, what you do then is you set a really slow shutter speed. So you open up your lens for about 10 seconds, press the shutter, and then you run to the car and you basically paint the light over the car. Now, I'm not really sure how it works. It kind of seems like magic a bit. For some reason the camera will capture the light, but you won't be in the photo even though you're running past the car. So let's give it a shot. Okay, so now I've got my background. I took a couple of different photos so I can choose the best one later. And now I'm going to open my shutter up for about 10 seconds and go and paint some light.
Hi.
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 Hi. もうしちゃったよ。あ、でもいけたかもしれない。うん。はいって言ったのに。押した。
Okay, so when we tried the light painting, we were getting too much light in the photo. So I realized 10 seconds is a bit too long. So we changed to 8 and then we got the perfect amount of light in the photo. So yeah, I guess if your light painting is looking too bright and like blown out, then just play with the shutter speed and make it a little bit faster. Yeah, and just find the right balance. So what we've done now is we've actually changed the car. Sorry, we've turned the car around so we can see the nose now, and we'll just try that one as well and see how it goes.
押した。
Alright, so we got some pretty cool shots here. We're not going to know how they turn out until we get back and actually put them in Photoshop and stack them. But yeah, excited to see those. So on to the next location. Alright, for our next location we came down here to the port area in Shinagawa, because we've got all these shipping containers stacked on top of each other. And you know, the Supra's got this kind of street, industrial, grungy vibe, so I thought shipping containers would match it. We've got a pretty simple shot here at 28mm, so we can get the entire, we can get the car, the containers and the crane in. But I'm just going to turn the car a little bit so we can see a little bit more of the front and get like 3/4 angle. People say you should always do it, but sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. Like turn the wheel towards the camera. So let's see what this looks like. Oh yeah, it looks kind of nice actually. So I'm seeing some kind of weird reflections on the car, so I'm going to use my circular polarizer to try and remove some of those. Alright, there we go, that looks great. And okay, so circular polarizers are great for removing reflections from cars, but sometimes even when you adjust the filter it doesn't get all the reflections. So you can take a couple of shots, like first remove the reflections from the front of the car and then twist the polarizer to get the side of the car, and then you can stack the two photos in post. Although the reflections on this road look kind of nice actually, because there aren't like too many distracting objects over here, except there's a little Lamborghini over there. Can you see it? I wonder would he let us swap cars. Nissan. For the entire time we've had this car, I've been using this Tamron 28-75 2.8 lens because it's just so versatile. But I haven't used my 85mm prime lens in a while, so I'm going to get that out now and see if we can take some nice detail shots. Alright, so this is a 85mm f1.4 Sigma art lens. I absolutely love this thing, but it's so big and heavy. It's only something you take out like once in a while when you've got the energy and the time. Boom! Wow, haven't used this in a while. Excited now. Let's close this. So here's the first shot from the first location. This was taken at sunrise down at the Yokohama Bay Bridge. This first shot was taken from pretty close to the car at 28mm, but the next photo was taken from way back at a longer focal length. So this side by side will show you how shooting at a longer focal length gives you compression in your background, making anything in the background look massive. I can't really decide which of these I prefer, but I think in general the Supra looks more like a Supra when shot at a shorter focal length, because the slight distortion you get around 28mm really emphasises that long hood and sleek body shape. And when you're shooting anything, it's always a good idea to try and place emphasis on the most important or unique features of your subject. However, the compressed background also looks pretty cool. Next we have some variations of the same shots. Probably the most notable difference here is I really pushed the orange tones using the HSL color sliders in Lightroom to recreate the early morning sun vibes we felt on location. For the longer focal length shot on the left, I shot from a much lower angle, which meant the bottom fifth of the frame is pretty much all tarmac, and because the camera was so close to the ground, you get this nice out of focus kind of pedestal for your subject. Then for the shot on the right, the sun was hitting pretty hard from the left of frame, so I thought turning the car around and having the sun light up the back end, which is my favourite part of this car, would look pretty cool. Let me know what you think in the comments. Here's some more shots, like this one where I shot again really low to the ground, used the bridge to create some nice leading lines. Shot here into the sun, got some pretty cool shadows and flares. Here again I used the sun to isolate the back end of the car, shooting up against this fence, which I thought looked pretty cool. And finally, one last shot from close up at a wide angle to really emphasize that long hood. Next we have the light painting from the factory in Kawasaki. First, I exposed for the background, but as you can see by doing so, the foreground is completely dark. So we open up the shutter for about 8 seconds, run by the car with an LED bar, and essentially paint with light. Then I shot variations of this, lighting up different parts of the car. When you've gotten all your shots, you take these, stack them in Photoshop, take the parts that look good, delete the weird light trails, and mush them all together to get this. These kind of shots take a lot more work, but I think the results are pretty cool. Last but not least, we have the shots from the port area in Shinagawa. This was shot late afternoon just before the sun came down, so we were hoping to get some cool golden hour tones, but it ended up being completely overcast. That was a shame on the day, but I used it to my advantage in post. I played with the clarity and dehaze filters in Lightroom to make the sky look a little bit more dramatic. Again, here we can see the difference between shooting at a shorter focal length versus a longer focal length. And apart from the edits to the sky, which were made using brushes, I made the same standard edits I make to most of my car photos, such as adding an S-curve to give it a bit of contrast, and then I used some radial and graduated filters to really make the car pop. Here are some other shots taken low, taken at the car's headlight level, and finally a nice detail shot showing those iconic taillights and that logo. Overall, I'm pretty happy with these shots. If you have any questions about how I took them, about my editing process, or anything at all, let me know in the comments. Okay, that's pretty much a wrap for today. We're about to take the Supra back. For me personally, it was a dream come true to drive this car. Absolutely loved every minute of it, and it didn't disappoint at all. Hope you guys enjoyed watching us take it around Tokyo. So like I said earlier, we decided this time to stay in the city and find various locations to shoot, which was a challenge in itself because there's so many people, so much traffic in the city. But we had a great time doing it. Came across a few challenges, got kicked out of one location, but it's all good, you know, we learned from it. Tried some new techniques, tried light painting for the first time, which is a bit tricky, but it's a lot of fun once you get the technique down. Yeah, so that's about it for today. Again, if you have any suggestions or requests for a car or a location or whatever you want us to do, please let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Love you. Bye-bye. The Mk4 Supra was a longer version of the Celica with 2 extra engines. No, 2 extra engines. F***ing hell. Katto.